A pleasant good afternoon to all. My name is Tanaz Sands, and today I'm going to be presenting my non-profit organization, which is called the National Association of Domestic Violence and Child Abuse. The objectives of this presentation is to define domestic violence, discuss the types of domestic violence, discuss the current issues of domestic violence in the Bahamas, why was the National Association of Domestic Violence and Child Abuse Survivors created, and lastly, to list the services that the organization provides. What is domestic violence? Well, domestic violence can simply be defined as an act of displaying any type of threatening or controlling behavior to gain power over one's partner. This can include sexual, physical, emotional, or verbal abuse. In most domestic violence cases, women are always found to be the victims. This is so because men still have beliefs that women should always be submissive to them and that they do not have any say in the relationship. According to a survey conducted by Black et al. In 2011, it was discovered that almost 3 in 10 women and 1 in 10 men in the United States have experienced some form of domestic violence by their partner. Additionally, another survey that was conducted found that serious physical violence cases that were reported, 77% of the victims were females and 56% were males. According to the American Psychological Association, it defines sexual abuse as perpetrators using sexual coercion without the victim's consent. Sexual abuse can also happen in marriages, and this is known as marital rape. And this occurs when one spouse forces sexual activities on the other without their permission. Physical abuse occurs in a relationship when one spouse inflicts physical pain or harm on their partner. This can include slapping, punching, choking, spitting, or hitting them with items. Some other forms of physical abuse can include a partner threatening to shoot their spouse or stab them with a knife. Emotional abuse occurs when one spouse humiliates the other, whether in public or private. This type of abuse affects a person psychologically and diminishes their self-worth and confidence. Emotional abuse can be more painful to deal with because it can interfere with a person's personality and can cause a lifelong expression on the person. Some examples of emotional abuse in relationships can include one partner alienating the other from society or seeing their families and friends, not allowing them to have any freedom, or constantly name-calling. According to Kippert 2022, verbal abuse can be found as a partner speaking with the intent to demean, humiliate, blame, or threaten the victim. Verbal abuse in relationships is one partner constantly cursing or using harsh language to the other. Some other forms of verbal abuse can include yelling or screaming, starting arguments for no reasons, criticism, or manipulation. Ever since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, domestic violence cases in the Bahamas have went up drastically. According to an article in a local newspaper, it stated that domestic violence matters increased by 19% with 3,283 incidents in 2021 compared to 2,754 in 2020. I will now play a video of the Commissioner Paul Rowell speaking on the increase of domestic violence in the Bahamas.
Also making news tonight, an increase in domestic violence prompting the Royal Bahamas Police Force to specifically address this issue with its officers. Carla Palmer reports on a 3-day seminar underway.
As frontline workers in the fight against crime, training continues to be essential for Royal Bahamas Police Force officers, primarily as they interact with members of the public in what are sometimes sensitive matters that can easily escalate into serious crimes like domestic abuse.
domestic-related matters, which decreased by 39% from 3,902 in 2019 to 2,432.
Still, with the public's help, Commissioner of Police Paul Roll tells officers that more must be done to reduce the numbers even more. Commissioner Roll anticipates this domestic violence training seminar to further empower and equip officers with the skills necessary to reflect change. Like Director of the Department of Gender and Family Affairs, Dr. Jacinta Higgs, he is also cognizant of the fact that the Bahamas has the highest rate of sexual offenses per capita in the Caribbean.
You must evolve with the understanding that you are accountable to the members of the public. Your actions are constantly being monitored, and with convenience of technology, you are always on display. When dealing with domestic-related matters, use common sense, fueled with empathy and compassion, which are the hallmarks of a consummate professional. Never allow personal feelings, emotions, and bias based on your worldview or outlook to infringe on anyone's constitutional right and their ability to receive police assistance. With shifting cultural norms and values in society, effective policing requires open-mindedness and innovative thinking.
One case of gender-based violence, one case of sexual offense is one too many. And so therefore we saw a decrease in certain aspects, but we also saw a little increase in sexual offenses. And so therefore that's serious enough for us. And so really we need to do our multi-sectoral approach to mitigate gender-based violence.
The seminar ends on Thursday. Carla Palmer, ZNS Network News.
The National Association of Domestic Violence and Child Abuse Survivors is a non-profit organization whose main aim is to protect domestic violence victims from their abusive partners. This organization was created due to the recent high numbers of domestic violence reports against women and their children in the Bahamas. The target audience of this organization is mainly for persons who are currently in abusive relationships, underage children who are being mistreated at home, and traumatized survivors who are able to escape their abusers. The National Association of Domestic Violence and Child Abuse Survivors' main aim is to provide safety for as many victims as possible. They will do this by offering services such as 24-hour hotline services, shelters, empowerment programs, and rehabilitative services. The goal of the organization is to find possible ways to reach out to persons in case they are too afraid to contact the organization. A crisis hotline will be available 24 hours for persons in need of a friend, counseling, or would like more information on the shelters and programs. There will also be a 24/7 online support chat for timid victims who do not wish to speak their problems verbally. The organization will provide a shelter for the abused victims and their children to stay. This shelter would include a food store, clothing and accessory store, counseling sessions, therapeutic activities, and access to vehicles only for emergencies. All of these resources will be free of charge to make the victims feel safe and at home. While at the shelter, there will be a no visitor policy until the psychologist has assessed the victim and given an all clear. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner with a variety of options will be served along with a drink of the victim's choice. Alcohol or illegal substances will be confiscated if found. Lastly, the victim will have a choice either to have a room to themselves or share a room with another victim. Empowerment programs and clubs will be created and instilled in all schools, colleges, and churches throughout the entire Bahamas. The empowerment program is to uplift women and teenage girls. It will make them have a high self-confidence, teach them to appreciate self-love, and it will also make them value themselves even more. Many unemployed women tend to stay in abusive relationships because they are financially dependent on their partner and have no other source of income. The leaders in the program will pave the way for all unemployed women undergoing these circumstances. A multitude of business ideas and opportunities will be present to help victims achieve their goals. Trained healthcare workers, such as physicians, psychologists, and therapists, will volunteer their time to help assist and counsel the victims. One-on-one sessions will be held every 2 days out of the week to allow victims to open up and talk about their traumatic experiences. The trained workers will give the victims coping mechanisms that they think is best for them after listening to their situation. Due to the existing COVID-19 protocols with large gatherings still being in place, the alternative method is to host webinars and Zoom sessions occasionally. The main aim of these sessions is to raise awareness to the public on domestic violence in the Bahamas. Members and volunteers in the organization will educate the public about domestic violence and its different forms. They will also give tips on how to notice early signs of behavioral problems which can prevent persons from becoming victims of domestic violence. These sessions will also give tips and strategies on how a victim can escape from their abusive relationship. With the aid of the government, volunteers, sponsors, and donations, the National Association of Domestic Violence and Child Abuse Survivors will be a successful nonprofit organization. The services and programs that are offered by this organization will help put an end to domestic violence in the Bahamas. Are you or someone that you know is currently in an abusive relationship? Do not hesitate to call the Royal Bahamas Police Force at 919 or 911, the Bahamas Crisis Center, or the National Crime Prevention Office. Here is just a few domestic violence safety tips so that you can know what to do when you come in contact with an abusive partner. Remember, no one should live in fear. Let's put an end to domestic violence.